Hello everyone, welcome to the first class of this week's live streaming for IELTS. My name is Adrian. I'm broadcasting to you live from beautiful Budapest, Hungary. Just doing a quick check here. Again, my name's Adrian. I'm in Central Europe. Time here is 4:30. This is usually when our classes start for the live streams. For those of you who are joining right now, hi Bohara, hi Abhishek. Just doing a quick sound and video check. Can you see the board behind me? Can you see me okay? And can you hear me all right? Just throw up a couple of yeses if you can. Awesome. Thank you for that, Khadija. And Ahmed. Awesome. Okay, so today we are going to be looking at an IELTS reading practice from our test number 1 on our websites. This is coming from our academic website because academic IELTS is a little bit different in the reading section than the general IELTS. But for those of you who are studying general IELTS, you should know that the third passage, or the third section, I should say, of your reading is very, very similar to the academic passages. So it's still very good to improve your reading comprehension and follow this lesson. If you're studying general IELTS, please visit us at gieltshelp.com. I've written that up here just in case you want to write it down at any time during the lesson. All of our live lessons, 50 of them, are available on our websites, and including our 40 high-definition videos that are pre-recorded professional lessons. Hi, Safa. Nice to see you in class again this week. And when you join our full courses on our websites, you can use the coupon code LIVE20, L-I-V-E 20, for a 20% discount. We are going through each of our 6 exams in the next 8 weeks. We're still just finishing up test 1 today, and we'll be starting test 2 tomorrow. So if you have our full course, make sure you print out the material so you can follow the classes nice and smooth and effectively. You have Super Chat in some countries in your YouTube live stream, so you can send me important comments or questions using Super Chat, donating a couple dollars. And if you're interested in booking some live IELTS speaking interview practice, please do contact me at my email, adrian@aehelp.com. On our websites, you'll also find, among the full course, all the audio, you'll find writing and editing help as well. Okay, we'll get right into our lesson today. I'd like to try to cover 2 reading passages with you, so let's do that now. Let's get into it. So again, this is reading passage 2 in test 1 in your academic IELTS test book, coming from aehelp.com. For this, we're going to use the audio as well. On our websites, we have audio read-along that helps you to study for these. So reading passage 2, let's jump right into it. Thanks for asking about my leg meat. It's getting much, much better now. I don't have a consistent pain going on anymore. I've been swimming lots and strengthening up my leg. Meat's just asking about that because at the end of January I broke my left leg, but it's definitely healed and doing a lot better. All right, so let's look at this reading passage. So here it starts with, you should spend about 20 minutes on questions 14 to 26, and then in our book it tells you where you can find the audio on the website. For those of you who don't have it, I did put the questions into the live stream for this passage. So you'll have it for this one. I couldn't fit it for the next one, so you can't see the questions there. Okay, and then this one starts with a list of headings question. Reading passage 1 has 7 paragraphs, A to G. Choose the correct heading for paragraphs A, C, and D to G from the list of headings below. Write the correct number, Roman numeral 1 to 11, in boxes 14 to 19 on your answer sheet. So as some of you know who follow our lessons regularly, the list of headings question you should read before you read the passage. That's why they give you this question before the passage. And then, of course, what you should be doing during the exam is paraphrasing these answers in your mind. However, at home when you're practicing this, you should try to paraphrase these on paper before you read the passage. That's the practice strategy for this. And I know a lot of students struggle with the list of headings questions, so I'll show you how you can answer these very, very effectively. Okay, and these should help you to understand the passage better. And this is the one and only question type in the IELTS reading that you should be answering as you read the passage. So not after you finish reading the passage, but answer these as you read the passage. So a couple of quick strategies about list of headings questions. Okay, so number one, answer these questions as you read the passage. Number two, before the passage, paraphrase the choices as much as you can. Okay, during the test, you do this in your mind. Now, if you're very good at writing, then you can paraphrase on the exam paper as well with your pencil. That's okay if they let you write into it. All right, now number three, this is a really important one. List of headings questions. Hi, Nitu. I'm doing very well, thank you. List of headings questions, girls and guys. What critical thinking question does the list of headings answer? So can anybody tell me that vital piece of information? And if you can do this effectively, then you can really get a good score with these list of headings questions. So what critical thinking question does the list of headings answers give? Yeah, Safa says it answers the what question. Absolutely. In critical thinking, you're using the what, why, how strategy. When you're at home, you should practice what, why, how for each paragraph as well as each passage. List of headings answers the what question for each paragraph. So you basically answer the what is this paragraph about? Okay, now we're not going to do the questions just yet. First of all, I'm going to play the audio for you for this reading passage, and all I want you to do is read. So I don't want you to focus on any of the questions. We can do that after. We'll read the passage on our own anyway, but for now, I just want you to practice your fluency a little bit. So for that, we're going to jump into our website. This is our academic website. It has the blue background. If you're studying for general IELTS, please make sure you're on our IELTS help website that has the green background. And then up at the top here, you log in to your full account. Of course, to join the full course, click on the red button. If you just want to try the course for free, then click on the green button and you can give it a go there. All right, so we're going to log in here. And all we're going to do right now is just read, and we're focusing on fluency and comprehension. So don't worry about the questions just yet. Is everybody ready to read? Listen and read. And of course, you can read aloud, so you can hear yourself reading. Okay, here we go. And audio CDs, and this is going to be reading passage 2. Is everybody ready? Yeah, Safa's ready. Claudio is ready. Okay, girls and guys, and I'm going to play the audio for this. Again, just read. Focus on reading aloud. Try to understand as much as you can, and then we will go through the passage and the questions afterwards. Here we go.
Continental drift and plate tectonics. When looking at a map of the world, it is natural to notice that Africa and South America seem to be able to fit together, as if they are two parts of a former whole. It was this insight which led Flemish cartographer Abraham Ortelius in 1596 to put forward for the first time the idea that at one period the continents were in different places than they are today. It would take over 300 years for the theory to be fully developed, and 50 years after that for the mechanism of the phenomena to be discovered. It was not until 1915 that German geologist Alfred Wegener proposed the continental drift theory, which states that the Earth's crust is made up of many sections that float slowly over the molten mantle and core of the Earth. Wegener argued that in the past the continents were all stuck together. He called this supercontinent Pangaea, which is Greek for all Earth. Wegener hypothesized that approximately 200 million years ago, this supercontinent began to break up, and the pieces began to move away from each other. Initially, Pangaea divided into two parts, named Laurasia and Gondwana. Laurasia consisted of what is today North America, Asia, and Europe, whilst Gondwana comprised modern-day South America, Africa, and Australia. These supercontinents eventually split apart further, resulting in today's continental configuration. It is interesting to note that today's continental alignment is just that. Millions of years in the future, the Earth's continents will appear very different. Given enough time, it is possible that the Earth's land masses will return to a Pangaea-like unified state. The evidence for continental drift is plentiful. The most common evidence is the discovery of the same type of dinosaurs in extremely different locations. The same type of dinosaur fossil will be found in northeastern parts of South America, as well as northwestern parts of Africa. The logical explanation for phenomena such as this is that at one time, these parts of the world were not only connected, but adjacent. The evidence for continental drift was discovered long before an explanation for it was found. It was during the 1960s that the theory of plate tectonics was developed. This new theory explained fully the nature of the Earth's crust, that it was broken up into many pieces that tended to smack into each other and pull apart from each other. In extreme cases, such as the Indian subcontinent, a plate's movement can be so severe that it causes massive mountains to be formed when the plates hit another. This is precisely what has happened over the past millions of years, when the Indian plate colliding with the Eurasian plate, in the process creating the Himalayas, which include the tallest mountain on Earth, Mount Everest. Plate tectonics are not only responsible for mountains and the movement of the continents, they are also responsible for volcanoes. Volcanoes usually result from one of the two plate configurations. They form in places where the plates are colliding, or where the plates are pulling apart. In the first case, the plates come together pushing against each other, causing friction and heat, which allows some of the crust material to melt, resulting in liquid magma. Because magma is less dense than the surrounding rock, it ends up rising to the surface, where it becomes a volcano. An example of this type of volcano is the famous Mount Vesuvius, which destroyed the city of Pompeii in 79 CE. The second type of volcano comes from divergent plates. These types tend to be underwater, as in the mid-oceanic ridges. Volcanic islands such as Iceland and Hawaii were formed by underwater volcanic activity, eventually spewing off enough matter to form land above the water. Of course, there is one final important result of plate tectonics: earthquakes. Earthquakes are perhaps the most terrifying of all natural disasters. They are practically invisible. They happen below the Earth's surface and have devastating results. Earthquakes happen along fault lines, places where two plates are colliding, diverging, or slipping past each other. In the case where the two plates are attempting to slip past each other, the most devastating earthquakes can occur. This is because friction does not allow the plates to pass each other until sufficient energy to counteract the resistance has been built up. So the two plates rub against each other for centuries or millennia until one day they finally slip. This slip is what results in a sudden catastrophic earthquake. If this slip occurs in the ocean, underneath the Earth's surface, it can cause a massive tidal wave known as a tsunami. If this slip occurs directly beneath a major city, massive destruction will result. There are many such cities at risk of these earthquakes, many of them along what is known as the Ring of Fire, surrounding the Pacific Ocean. These cities include Tokyo, San Francisco, Vancouver, and Santiago. Understanding plate tectonics reveals that it is not a question of if these major cities will get hit by an earthquake, it is only a question of when.
The causes of the American economic crisis.
Okay, can anybody tell me what this passage is about? While I go back and stop the audio from continuing. There we go. So can anybody tell me what this passage is about? Yeah, Shahil, just the other way around. Plate tectonics is usually the common expression here. Plate tectonics. Absolutely. Okay, so good. So you're sitting in the IELTS. By the way, girls and guys, you do not need to read that fast to get a nice high IELTS band score. You can read about 30-40% slower than this native British English speaker, and you should still have enough time to be able to finish the passage, understand what you're reading, and answer the questions, okay? So some good answers. It's continental drift, plate tectonics, that is... those are synonyms, and that is what we just read there. Okay, so you're sitting in the IELTS and you get to this reading passage. You read the title, of course, first. You use some critical thinking to predict what the passage is about. Now, of course, we can easily do that because we just heard it. So it says seismic shifts, silent drifts. Hopefully, you get an idea that you're about to read a passage regarding plate tectonics and the movement of the Earth. And then you look at the questions. You realize that you have a list of headings questions, so you know that you're going to answer these as you go. You make sure you review all of them. So first one, violent eruptions, magma, lava, and new islands. So you can paraphrase that, forming new islands, the crust of the Earth, powerful explosions, the destruction of Pompeii, the death of a city, two continents become many, two continents separate into many parts, fossil evidence, proof from bones of dinosaurs, adjacent continents, continents that are beside each other, an intuitive notion, a hypothesis or a visible theory, the ring of fire, the coast of the Pacific Ocean, the invisible threat, the danger that cannot be seen. Gondwana comes together. Gondwana joins up. A hypothesis of unity and disunity. A theory of oneness or manyness. A mechanism to match the theory is found. A system that agrees with the idea is discovered. Okay, so that's the kind of paraphrasing that I'm doing in my mind while I'm looking at these. Now, of course, the more you practice this at home, the better you get and the closer you can get to what I just did there. And then you look at the other questions at the end of the passage. All other types of questions in the IELTS are found at the end of the passage. List of headings is the only one that you'll see before. And then you see a true, false, not given type of question. Should I be reading this true, false, not given type of question before I read the passage? No, absolutely not, right? Because as we've discussed before, true, false, not given types of questions have at least a couple answers that are going to be not given or false, which is confusing to the reader. You don't want to be confused with that information beforehand. And then I look at the next question. It's complete each statement with the correct ending, A to F. So this is completing the endings. Should I read this question before I read the passage? Anybody complete the ending? Should I be reading this one? Post office says yes. Manisha says no. Lytton says yes. Okay, that was kind of a trick question, girls and guys. Of course, here, the three questions, these three, 24, 25, 26, that's in the passage. But the answers that are at the bottom here, you can see there are 6 of them. These, only half of them will be true, so only half of this information is correct. So this I don't want to read. So I don't want to read the answers, but I can definitely read the questions because that will give me a little bit of an idea of the passage. So plate tectonics result in mountains, volcanoes, and something. Volcanoes result from the difference in, okay, and then a tsunami can result from a slip in. All right, so I can read those, but I'll leave the answers for after the passage, because again, they can confuse me with false information. So now I go back to the beginning of the passage and I begin reading, okay? Is it a good idea, so this is just a little bit of a caution that I want to throw out there, is it a good idea to skim or scan the passage for answers? So instead of trying to read the whole passage, is it a good idea for me just to skim or scan the passage and look for keywords and try to match things up? Okay, notice that a lot of the students in the chat right now are saying no, 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 absolutely not. Yes, it's not a good idea. You should read all the passage. Skimming and scanning for answers is a really bad idea because many of the questions for the passage will be paraphrased and you're not going to find matching keywords. In fact, sometimes what you'll find if you're doing that is you'll find matching keywords in different sections, in different parts that don't have the right answer. So you'll get even more confused, you'll lose more marks, and you'll become even more frustrated. So skimming and scanning is a really bad idea, guys and girls. Just completely forget about that strategy. If you need to get a score of band 6.5, 7.5, or higher, you need to forget about skimming and scanning for answers, okay? So you need to focus on comprehension. All right, so let's answer the list of headings questions as we move along, and we'll read and do that together. So again, just read with me. I'm going to read a little bit slower than the audio, and then we'll answer the questions as we go. So here we are. Seismic shifts, silent drifts. When looking at a map of the world, it is natural to notice that Africa and South America seem to be able to fit together as if they are two parts of a former whole. It was this insight which led Flemish cartographer Abraham Ortelius in 1596 to put forward for the first time the idea that at one period the continents were in different places than they are today. It would take over 300 years for the theory to be fully developed and 50 years after that for the mechanism of the phenomenon to be discovered. Now, you need to answer this question, and then you can answer the list of headings. What is this paragraph about? So what is this first paragraph about? Without looking at the questions. Anybody? What is the paragraph? What is that first paragraph about? Okay, Aisha, yeah, you're kind of on the right track. First notice about what? Yeah, Nargiza, that's kind of the right idea. It's the first theory about these plates. So it's the origin or the history of plate tectonics. Okay, let's see if we can find the answer that we think is the best. So is it violent eruptions? No. Destruction of Pompeii? No. Two continents become many? No. Fossil evidence? Meh, maybe not. Adjacent continents? An intuitive notion. The ring of fire, the invisible threat, Gondwana comes together, a hypothesis of unity and disunity, a mechanism to match the theory is found. So which one of these do you think is the best answer? So some of you are saying it's 11, some of you are thinking it's 10, maybe some of you are thinking it's 6. All right, well, we can consider all three of these. What is the best answer? Let's see what everybody's saying. Most of you are thinking it's 11. All right. I would say a hypothesis of unity and disunity is probably the best answer here. So, but we can't choose that one because look, that one's already given for us. So then we know it has to be either 11 or 6. Now, 6 looks pretty good because it is an intuitive notion, right? By Abraham Ortelius. So I'm going to put 6 up there. Remember, I can change it after. I don't need to panic yet. So watch how I do this. Okay, I know it's not 10, so I only split between 11 and 6. And for now, I'll put in 6. If you put in 11, that's fine, because maybe in a bit here, we'll get a better idea of what it actually is. All right, so for this one, we have the answer given, but we should read it because we'll need to know the information for the other questions. It was not until 1915 that German geologist Alfred Wegener proposed the continental drift theory. Aha, so here we have the theory, which states that the Earth's crust is made up of many sections that float slowly over the molten mantle and core of the Earth. Wegener argued that in the past, the continents were all stuck together. He called this supercontinent Pangaea, which is Greek for all Earth. Wegener hypothesized that approximately 200 million years ago, this supercontinent began to break up and the pieces began to move away from each other. All right, so what is this about? It's about the theory of continental drift, which is the continents moving together and apart. So it's given for us. That's the example, X. Now, of course, as I told many of you, usually this question, so the first paragraph and the last one, which is going to be G, usually those are the two most difficult because it's the introduction and the conclusion. Okay, so usually the introduction and the conclusion are the two most difficult to answer for list of headings, all right? So let's look at paragraph C. Initially, Pangaea divided into two parts named Laurasia and Gondwana. Laurasia consisted of what is today North America, Asia, and Europe, whilst Gondwana comprised modern-day South America, Africa, and Australia. These supercontinents eventually split apart further, resulting in today's continental configuration. It is interesting to note that today's continental alignment is just that. Millions of years in the future, the Earth's continents will appear very different. Given enough time, it is possible that the Earth's land masses will return to a Pangaea-like unified state. Okay? So here, again, what is this paragraph about? What is this paragraph about? So we're looking at C right now. Yep, so you think it's about the supercontinents, Pangaea coming into two other supercontinents, Laurasia, Gondwana, and then that one splitting into even more. So it's two continents splitting into many smaller continents. That's what this is talking about. It's talking about the biggest pieces of the Earth in history splitting into the smallest pieces that we have today. So let's look at the answers. Here we have violent eruptions, no. The destruction of Pompeii, no. The continents become many. Two continents become many. That looks really good. Fossil evidence, nope. Adjacent continents, Intuitive notion, ring of fire, doesn't make sense. Invisible threat, no. Gondwana comes together. It's not that one because Gondwana does not come together here. Hypothesis of unity, disunity, no, because we already have that answer. And a mechanism to match the theory is found. We haven't really thought about that one, just for the first one. So number 3 would be correct here. So this would be 3 as the best answer. Two continents become many. All right, let's go on to paragraph D. So far, so good. Everybody's following okay? Yep, it looks like you're all doing all right. You're answering the questions. Sure. Let's have a look at paragraph D. Again, you're thinking about this as, what is this paragraph about? And usually in body paragraphs, the answer to the what question, what is the paragraph about, is found in the first 2 sentences because, of course, those are the topic sentences for the body paragraphs. The introduction and the conclusion are a little bit trickier because it can be near the end or even in the middle. Okay, so let's have a look at paragraph D. The evidence for continental drift is plentiful. The most common evidence is the discovery of the same type of dinosaurs in extremely different locations. The same type of dinosaur fossil will be found in northeastern parts of South America as well as northwestern parts of Africa. The logical explanation for the phenomenon such as this is that at one time these parts of the world were not only connected but adjacent. So what is this paragraph about? Anybody? In your own words. What is it about? Use your own brain. Don't just use the answers. So give me the answer in your own words. Okay, everybody's just kind of giving me the answer from the list of choices. Evidence, yeah, there you go, Alien Eater. So at least you're rewording it a little bit. So evidence in fossils to prove the theory. Yeah, Gondwana, that's a nice answer to the question. Fossil evidences to prove the above theory of continental drift. Absolutely. So again, you got to be able to use your own brain, answer the question on your own, and then choose the answer. If you're looking at the answers first, you can get confused because sometimes there's two answers that look really similar. Okay? So here, violent eruptions, no. The discovery, two continents become many. Fossil evidence, adjacent continents. I want to make sure there isn't a better one, so don't just jump on that. Make sure there isn't one that could be better. Adjacent continents, an intuitive notion, the ring of fire, invisible threat, hypothesis, mechanism to match the theory. Yeah, fossil evidence looks the best. I don't want to overthink it either. So I'm going to go with number 4 here. And again, in your answer sheet, just put the answer as you see it. So this should go into line 16 here. 4. All right, let's look at paragraph E. Okay, so here we go. Read with me. And again, I urge you to read nice and loud. It's important to read loud so you can not only see and use your eyes for learning, but you can use your mouth, which is your motor muscles, and you can use your ears, which is your auditory cortex. So you want to combine auditory, visual, and motor cortex together for more effective learning. That's why it's important to read aloud. Okay, let's read E. The evidence for continental drift was discovered long before an explanation for it was found. It was during the 1960s that the theory of plate tectonics was developed. This new theory explained fully the nature of the Earth's crust, that it was broken up into many pieces that tended to smack into each other and pull apart from each other. In extreme cases, such as the Indian subcontinent, a plate's movement can be so severe that it causes massive mountains to be formed when the plate hits another. This is precisely what has happened over the past millions of years with the Indian plate colliding with the Eurasian plate, in the process creating the Himalayas, which include the tallest mountain on the earth, Mount Everest. Okay, what is this paragraph about? Girls and guys, in your own words, what does this paragraph discuss? And definitely the topic sentence here is very visible in the beginning of the paragraph. Can anybody tell me what it is discussing? It's not the continent being discovered. Continents are already something that's clear for humans at this point. The theory of plate tectonics itself, Saddam, yeah. So here, I'm looking for a specific kind of word, the evidence for continental drift. That would be the fossils in the beginning there, in the previous. I'm still looking for somebody to say, not just what is the theory of plate tectonics? It's the system, right? The continental drift theory, the system, the way that it's working. So this is where people realize that, aha, how does this work? So this paragraph talks about how plate tectonics actually manifests, how it happens. So let's see if I can find something that's close to that idea. Violent eruptions, no. The destruction of Pompeii, no. Two continents become many, no. Fossil evidence. We've already chosen that one. If you're really sure of your answer, like fossil evidence, you can cross it out so you don't have to keep reading it. Adjacent continents, intuitive notion, ring of fire, invisible threat, Gondwana comes together, a hypothesis of unity and disunity, a mechanism to match the theory is found. So which one do you think is the correct answer? Yeah, if I'm thinking to my what question, I'm thinking, well, this is just how the system of plate tectonics actually works, then a synonym for system would be a mechanism, right? Function or mechanism. So now what's interesting is I can be confident that my first answer is correct as number 6 instead of 11 because it's the better answer, right? So here I put number 11, Roman numeral, and now I'm confident that this is probably my best answer here. Number 10 is used in the example, so it won't be that. I'm confident that this is a good answer for this paragraph. So by deduction, right? By deduction, I can realize that this is probably 6 here. Cool. All right, now I'm feeling more confident and I'm not worried about getting confused and getting those couple paragraphs wrong. All right. Let's have a look at paragraph F. Again, read with me. Plate tectonics are not only responsible for mountains and the movement of the continents, they are also responsible for volcanoes. Volcanoes usually result from one of two plate configurations. Notice the colon here, it's giving us those two configurations. They form in places where the plates are colliding or where the plates are pulling apart. In the first case, the plates come together, pushing against other, causing friction and heat, which allows some of the crust material to melt, resulting in liquid magma. Because magma is less dense than the surrounding rock, it ends up rising to the surface where it becomes a volcano. An example of this type of volcano is the famous Mount Vesuvius, which destroyed the city of Pompeii in 79 CE. The second type of volcano comes from divergent plates. These types tend to be underwater, as in the mid-oceanic ridges. Volcanic islands such as Iceland and Hawaii were formed by underwater volcanic activity, eventually spewing off enough matter to form land above water. Awesome. So what is this paragraph about? So paragraph F, girls and guys, what is it about? No, AJ, you don't need to look at the other questions. Only the list of headings. You should be able to answer the other questions after without looking too much at the paragraph. If you can do a good job with list of headings, you can usually get all of your other questions right after. So Lytton says it's about volcanic activity, volcanic eruptions, and the mechanisms for that. Rashmita, that's an excellent answer. Yeah, so it's the mechanisms of volcanoes in connection to plate tectonics. Yeah, Aisha, that's a good answer as well. So volcanoes as it's related to plate tectonics. Great. So let's have a look at that, okay? So we go back to our list, and now you'll see why it's so important to answer the what question first on your own, and then look at these. All right, so violent eruptions, magma, lava, and new islands. That looks pretty good. The destruction of Pompeii, well, it talks about the destruction of Pompeii, but that's just an example, okay? That's not what the paragraph is about. So students who don't understand the strategy for this type of question might make the mistake of choosing this one, and that would definitely be a wrong answer, okay? Because that's not what this paragraph is about. Two continents become many, okay, we've already chosen that one. Fossil evidence, we've chosen that one. Intuitive notion, we've chosen that one. Ring of fire, the invisible threat. Gondwana comes together. A hypothesis. Okay, so by looking at these, the best answer is, and Bella, Lytton, Hadil, Manju, you're all right, is number 1. So here, I give the answer number 1, Roman numeral 1. Okay, great. Now we have just the conclusion left. Again, the conclusion can be a little bit tricky because the topic sentence can be tough to find, or sometimes you need to infer the answer. Oop, went right past it. Okay, here we go. Of course, there's one final important result of plate tectonics: earthquakes. Earthquakes are perhaps the most terrifying of all natural disasters. They are practically invisible. They happen below the Earth's surface and have devastating results. Earthquakes happen along fault lines, places where two plates are colliding, diverging, or slipping past each other. In the case where the two plates are attempting to slip past each other, the most devastating earthquakes can occur. This is because friction does not allow the plates to pass each other until sufficient energy to counteract the resistance has been built up. So the two plates rub against each other for centuries or millennia until one day they finally slip. This slip is what results in a sudden catastrophic earthquake. If the slip occurs in the ocean underneath the Earth's surface, it can cause a massive tidal wave known as a tsunami. If the slip occurs directly beneath a major city, massive destruction will result. There are many such cities at risk of these earthquakes, many of them along what is known as the Ring of Fire surrounding the Pacific Ocean. These cities include Tokyo, San Francisco, Vancouver, and Santiago. Understanding plate tectonics reveals that it is not a question of if these major cities will get hit by an earthquake, it is only a question of when. All right, what is this paragraph about? Girls and guys, what is this paragraph about? Earthquakes. Yeah, it's about earthquakes and their destruction, right? So the way the plates are moving and that resulting in earthquakes, okay? It gives us some examples of the Ring of Fire and so on, but we're focusing here on earthquakes. So our first pick should be something that is to do with earthquakes, okay? A Ring of Fire might be just a detail like Pompeii for the previous. So violent eruptions, magma, lava, new islands? No, and we know that was more for volcanoes. Destruction of Pompeii? No. Two continents become many. Fossil evidence, adjacent continents, an intuitive notion, the Ring of Fire, the invisible threat, Gondwana comes together, a hypothesis of unity and disunity, a mechanism to match the theory is found. Girls and guys, what do you think? What's the best answer here? Yeah, it's 8, the invisible threat, because what is the invisible threat? The invisible threat is the earthquake, right? So invisible threat here is a paraphrase. It's a descriptive paraphrase for earthquake. Everybody agrees with me? Hope so. Ring of Fire is just a detail. That's an example. That's not what the paragraph is about. The paragraph doesn't talk about specifically about the Ring of Fire. It talks about earthquakes. So the correct answer here is indeed number 8. Okay? The invisible threat. That is the better what answer. What is it about? It's about earthquakes. Ring of Fire is just a detail, just like Pompeii was a detail for one of these other paragraphs and is not the correct answer. So you have to be really, really careful. That's why students who use skimming and scanning for the IELTS reading will often get a lot of these list of headings questions wrong, because they'll tend to answer Ring of Fire for this one, they'll answer Pompeii for another one. So if you're doing skimming and scanning, you're probably going to nosedive with these questions, and you don't want to do that, okay? You want to have good, effective, high-level reading comprehension and not something that doesn't work. Of course, the reason why skimming, scanning doesn't work is because that will not work for you in university, and they want to make sure that you can read effectively for your university studies when you're studying abroad or at the higher level of English. Okay, so hopefully you got those answers correct. Now we can go to the remaining questions. And somebody said, shouldn't we answer these questions as we read also? No, because when you do a good job with the list of headings, you should be able to answer most of the other questions no problem without reading, okay? Because now you have such a clear understanding of the paragraph. So let's have a look at these. True, false, not given. It took over 350 years for the theory and mechanism of continental drift theory to be developed. So first question, is it important? So is it important to know how long this took? Is it important to know how long this took? Yes, it is. It's absolutely important. So I'm showing you the strategy, or reviewing the strategy for true, false, not given again with you here. So it is important to know how long it took for us to understand the continental drift theory. Is it true that it took us about 350 years for the theory and mechanism of continental drift to be developed? Is it true? Okay, Gondwana says, yes, it's true. Yeah, it is true. So therefore, the answer has to be true. Now, I'll show you where that's coming from, but you don't need to check in the paragraph. If you have good reading comprehension, you should remember this. So it says here, it would take over 300 years for the theory to be fully developed, and 50 years after that for the mechanism of the phenomenon to be discovered. So 300 plus, with the and word, 50 is 350. And the question gives you that hint, right? Because the question also says it took 350 years for the theory and plus mechanism. So this is indeed true, okay? Okay, the next one. The Earth's crusty shell is made up of plates which float slowly across the ocean. Is it important for us to know that the Earth's crust is made up of plates? Is that important? Anybody? Is it important for us to know that? Yes, it is. Is it true that these plates float across the ocean? Do they float on the ocean? Girls, guys, visualization. Remember your grade 7 science class. Do these massive plates of the Earth float on the ocean? No, they do not, okay? You have to know this kind of basic science. They don't float on the water, come on. They're super heavy pieces. They float on the molten mantle of the Earth, right? The ocean is on top of these plates. These plates are ginormous, okay? So the answer here is definitely false. And all you want to put in your answer sheet is just a big F if it's false and a big T if it's true. Please don't write the word. It takes time, energy, and you can make a spelling mistake. If you make a spelling mistake, for example, you write it as false, like that, you get it wrong, okay? So you can't make spelling mistakes and lose silly marks. You have to just keep it simple. Just write a big F, okay? All you want to do is write a big F when it's false. Okay, let's jump to 22. There is significant evidence that India was once attached to Antarctica. Okay, there is significant evidence that India was once attached to Antarctica. All right, do we need to know where India was attached to? Is it important to know where India was attached to for this, or where these continents were attached to? Yes, it is. Does it talk about India being attached to Antarctica? No. Is it possible that India was attached to Antarctica? Is it possible that at one point India was attached to Antarctica? Yes, it is. So it's technically not important to know this because Antarctica is that big continent down south covered by ice, and nobody lives there because it's so cold. So it's not really important for us in this case. It's not given. We don't know this information. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it's not important for us because there's no humans living in Antarctica, only scientists and very few of them. Okay, Mount Everest is a result of a collision between the Eurasian and Himalayan plates. Mount Everest is a result of the collision between Eurasian and Himalayan plates. Is it important for us to know what Mount Everest or mountains, where they're coming from in this theory of plate tectonics? Is it important for us? Mountains, plate tectonics. Is Mount Everest a really good example of those mountains forming from plate tectonics? Yeah, absolutely. This is some important piece of information. It's details, but it's an excellent example for this theory of plate tectonics. Is it true that Mount Everest resulted from the Eurasian and the Himalayan plates colliding? Careful with the wording. Was it a Himalayan plate that hit the Eurasian plate? No, that's right. Himalayans are the mountains. The Eurasian plate hit the Indian plate. plate, right? So you got to be really careful with these wordings like Himalayan and like ocean, okay? Pay attention to the details of these questions. Don't lose silly marks because you're not paying attention. So this one here is false. The Mount Everest, it tells us it's a result of the collision between the Eurasian and the Indian plates, okay? So you can see that here. Somebody's asking, can I show you the location of that? Yes. Let me see. Here it is. This is precisely what has happened over the past millions of years with the Indian plate colliding with the Eurasian plate, in the process creating the Himalayas, which include the tallest mountain on Earth, Mount Everest. So it's the Eurasian plate colliding with the Indian plate, okay? Again, if you're not sure, you can find the location of these answers in our answer key. So we have transcripts for all of our reading that shows you the location of these as well. So if you don't have our materials, I highly recommend getting our materials. It's some of the best materials in the world for helping you achieve a high score on IELTS, and that's aehelp.com for academic and gieltshelp.com for general. All right, so hopefully you got those questions. Now let's look at the last three. And the last three, which is complete the sentence endings, you kind of do them with a similar strategy as the list of headings, okay? And it's the same for multiple choice, okay? Multiple choice, list of headings, and matching sentence endings. You need to think about the answer on your own before you look at the choices. That's really an important step to making sure that you get them correct, okay? All right, here we go. Plate tectonics result in mountains, volcanoes, and what? Anybody? Can anybody tell me? Plate tectonics results in mountains, volcanoes, and islands? Sure. Islands could be possible. Anything else that works there for us? Earthquakes, that's right. Yeah, earthquakes and islands. That's the two other points that are given to us. So we'll check that in a minute. Volcanoes result from the difference in what? Anybody? Volcanoes result in the difference in what? I don't know about density, maybe. Difference in the maybe density, maybe location of the plates, right? Sure. Heat or difference in pressure, sure, something like that. A tsunami can result from a slip in what? Anybody, the last one? A tsunami can result from a slip in... Plates in the water. I'm going to put Aisha and Semsem together. So plates in the water. Sure. So now let's choose the answers that are the closest. Okay, so plate tectonics result in mountains, volcanoes, and here we're looking for islands and earthquakes. So the density of rock and magma, the combination, no. The temperature of crust and mantle, the changing climate of today's Earth, the part of the crust lying beneath open water, the motion of the continents. Which one do you think is the best answer for the first one, for 24? A, B, C, D, E, or F? Yeah, I would say F would be the best one, right? The motion of continents. Motion of continents is an earthquake. Don't forget, we humans call it an earthquake, but what that earthquake is the movement of continents. So make sure that you notice paraphrasing there, right? So the best answer here would be F, the motion of continents, which is the same essentially as saying an earthquake, okay? All right, volcanoes result from the difference in the density of common rock and magma, the combination of high temperature and low density, the temperature of the crust and mantle, the changing climate of today's Earth, the part of the crust lying beneath open water. So which one is the closest answer for us? A, B, C, D, E, or F? Okay, most of you are saying B, the combination of high temperature and low density. If I'm not sure in this case, I can jump back to the section and I can see it already here. Responsible for mountains and the movement of continents, volcanoes. Volcanoes result from two plate configurations. Okay, and then it says causing friction and heat, which allows some of the crust material to melt, resulting in liquid magma. Because magma is less dense than the surrounding rock, it ends up rising to the surface. So it looks like I can be confident that B is going to be the correct answer. So B is my answer there. All right, and then the last one. A tsunami can result from a slip in, and some of you said, and slip in the plates underwater. The part of the crust lying beneath open water looks pretty good. The changing climate, I don't know. The motion of continents, Okay, let's say the part of the crust lying beneath open water. And I can read the full sentence to make sure that it makes sense. A tsunami can result from a slip in the part of the crust lying beneath open water. Yeah, that sounds like a good answer there for us. So E works, and so I put the big letter E into my answer sheet. So F, B, and E. Awesome, looking good. I'm very proud of all of those students who are putting up your answers, and looks like most of you are figuring out how this works. Great, good job, everyone. So that's how you do a reading passage as such. Now, for those of you who are watching, especially from the beginning, you'll realize that this class so far has taken 56 minutes. Okay, so we took 56 minutes to do this whole passage. Now, in that 56 minutes, we read the passage twice, right? Once we heard the audio for it, and once we read it together. We talked about the strategy for list of headings. We talked about the strategy for true, false, not given. We talked about the strategy for sentence endings, matching sentence endings. I gave you lots of great sales pitches about joining our websites, aehelp.com for academic IELTS, glshelp.com for general. I introduced myself and had a dialogue with some of the students. So I looked at your comments, and the whole gambit took me 57 minutes from start to finish. So what does that tell you? That tells you that when you practice these strategies at home, and when you have a decent level of reading fluency and comprehension in English, you should be able to do this passage without all of my advertising pitches and explanations and interactions in that 20-minute time, and you should be able to do it quite well. Amazing fact, I am currently in Budapest, Hungary, Central Europe. All right, so who wants to do one more passage, a little bit less strategy, maybe a little bit less sales pitches, and just getting right into it so I can show you again how this works. Reading passage 3 is usually the most difficult of the reading sections. I say let's do it. Let's try to do this in 30 minutes. So here we go. Everybody ready? All right, here we are. So I'll give you a chance to ask and answer some questions at the end, girls and guys. Let's just move through this nice and slow. I want to show you that you can, in fact, be very quick and efficient when you know what you're doing and you're doing it correctly. So reading passage 3, okay, that looks like a stock market index. Causes of the American economic crisis. Okay, we're talking about America's trouble. What is that? That was America's market collapse, especially during 2008. For those of you who remember, why did that happen? It happened largely because of the real estate market and the lending policies, the way that the American banks and people were lending and borrowing money. How did it happen? People were borrowing money that they couldn't pay. The banks couldn't pay each other. The banks couldn't pay the government. It was a big mess. Suddenly it crashed. People lost their homes and millions of dollars. Okay, let me look at the questions here. So just bear with me, girls and guys. Yes, no, not given. Okay, I know that there's extra false information, so I'm going to skip that one. I don't want to know it. Okay, complete each sentence with the correct ending. So it's another sentence completion type question. I know that I don't need to look at the answers. Those are confusing. Banks have a responsibility to something. Each bank is responsible for something. A recession is started when? Okay, good. Paragraph completion. Complete the summary. So it's, summary completion. Summary is usually half or the whole passage. So complete the summary using the list of words. I know that this will help me to understand the passage, so I'm going to read it before the passage. The American government's role. It is the American government which is arguably most responsible for the economic crisis. In order to properly, people must be sheltered from possible problems created by. Regulation is required in any society in order to coerce people into acting for the benefit of. Government is in place to serve its citizens, and in this case, it has failed. Apologists will say that the recession is just on the radar of American supremacy, while others say that such bumps on the road are of serious problems. Regulation is the solution to the problem, but the American of independence and small government will be very difficult to crack. And then I have my choices there. I don't need to worry about those. Okay, I have one more question here, multiple choice. Question 40. I read just the question, not the answers, because those will be confusing. 3 of them are wrong, but the question is good to read, so I'll read that. Which of the following phrases best describes the main aim of reading passage 3? Okay, so this is asking about the goal of the author, the main goal of the author. Awesome. Let's do this. So now I go back and I read the passage at a nice, comfortable speed, making sure that I understand as much as possible what I'm reading, okay? Causes of the American economic crisis. When discussing the causes of the late 2000s American subprime mortgage crisis, it is easy to lay all the blame on the banks. But it is incorrect to claim innocent the individual home buyers involved, as well as the American government as a whole. There are many instances in the years leading up to the crisis where moral obligations failed to be met. For the home buyers, it is a case of ignoring a scenario which was upon deeper inspection too good to be true. For the bankers, it was falling prey to their own laissez-faire loaning policies, lending without giving much interest to the mandates required of the borrower. For the government, it was instituting such a laissez-faire system in the first place, free of regulatory checks and balances. Okay, so what is this paragraph about? It's about the American crisis in the 2000s and who is to blame. It's talking about the government, the people, and the banks for different reasons. The government was too relaxed. The banks were lending irresponsibly, and the people were just borrowing money irresponsibly. Okay, so I understand it. It's pretty good. I'm going to keep going. Okay, and read nice and loud with me, girls and guys. If a person falls prey to an email scam, the blame is deservedly placed on the hapless person. Society feels pity for them, but nobody feels the government should reimburse the individual for their lack of caution. The person in this scenario has affected no one but themselves. If a person falls prey to a too good to be true subprime mortgage and ends up bankrupt, he or she is not just hurting themselves, they are also hurting society because that debt inevitably rests with the populace. Thus, while a person has no social responsibility to act a certain way, in the case of the email scam, a person does have social obligation when it comes to actions that can hurt society, such as taking on a subprime mortgage. The counter argument here is that people perceive banks as possessing a certain level of trustworthiness and that it is unreasonable to expect people to have their too good to be true radar active when dealing with banks. Nevertheless, people do have an ethical obligation to be aware of pitfalls, and being told it's okay by trustworthy institutions is simply not a sufficient excuse. Okay, so what is this paragraph doing? It's giving me an example of an email scam, which is somebody just hurting themselves, versus when they borrow money from a bank to buy a house, they're hurting society, not just themselves if they can't pay it back. So they have to be responsible, and the bank has to be responsible too. People can't just imagine that banks can be trusted without question. Okay, I understand it. Let's keep going. So I hope you girls and guys realize what I'm doing here. I'm checking my understanding with each paragraph. Banks have a responsibility to protect their customers and to look out for the general economic health of not just their company, but of the entire industry. The American banks failed in these considerations in each of these regards. First, they offered mortgages to millions of ill-qualified buyers who were clearly not going to be able to fulfill the requirements of the mortgage to make the loans viable. Individual lenders acted selfishly, exploiting very relaxed lending policies to benefit their own finances. Second, banks failed to look after the health of their own companies. This is not a failure of individual bankers, but a failure of those in management positions. Many U.S. companies that need a multi-billion-dollar bailout are an unmitigated disaster. Although this failure falls more in line with the email scam, that is to say a failure which is not a social failure, but a business failure, the social failure lies in the bank's obligation to the entire industry and the economy as a whole. Each bank is responsible for a small piece of the economic pie. If one bank fails, it appears as a blip on the radar. However, with each individual failure, the threshold for failure for the remaining companies is lowered. It is in this sense that companies have a moral obligation to do good business, because if they do not, they raise the chances of bankruptcy for each of their competitors and the economy as a whole. Eventually, the threshold of failure is so low that almost all lending has to cease and a recession is ignited. Okay, so when there's no lending, a recession happens. Why? Because the banks are doing something wrong. What are they doing wrong? They're irresponsible in two ways. It tells me that up here. One is they're not taking care of the customers because they're lending dangerously, and they're not taking care of the industry because they're not paying respect to their important part, individual part in the banking industry as a whole. All right, good. I understand that paragraph. In this investigation of blame placing, arguably the body who holds the most responsibility is the American government. The truth is that if people are not protected from themselves by the government, society cannot function well. Okay, that's my topic sentence. So who's to blame most? The government, because everybody elects the government to be the main controller. Clear. The wholly free market is akin to an economic version of Hobbes' state of nature, people acting like tigers and bears trying to get each other's money. Society does not work optimally when it pays overwhelming dividends for people to act selfishly. It takes regulation and economic policy to force people into acting in society's best interest. One of the duties of a government is to protect its citizens from each other, and in this case, the American government has failed catastrophically. Defenders of the free market will claim that this recession is simply a temporary bump in the road for what is arguably the greatest economic power in world history. They will claim that the free market is the best interest of everyone, despite its rather unsightly undercarriage. In response, it can be argued that the bumps in the road are symptomatic of a system in need of healing by means of regulation. Unfortunately, American culture is such that any regulation is seen as government interference in private affairs, and such intervention conflicts with American ideals. Economics is not the only arena where this belief system is played out. Americans continue to allow their poorest citizens to live without proper health care, and they put the burden of the cost of higher education directly on students. Many European countries fully subsidize higher education. Until this distaste for government intervention is cast aside, events like the subprime mortgage crisis will continue to occur. Whether they are merely bumps on the economic road or signs of forthcoming systematic collapse or systemic collapse, in both cases, the government has failed to fulfill their role to save the citizens from themselves. In regard to subprime mortgages, regulation of banking is like an insurance policy for the economy. It may lower profits, insurance policies cost money, but it smooths out the bumps in the road. As long as the American government continues to turn a blind eye to these insurance policies, they will continue to put the social well-being of citizens at risk. Okay, so this was about the government's fault in this subprime. They need to create more regulations, and this is a problem with a free market where people see government regulations as interfering with business, which is dangerous. That's what creates the bumps in the road. Now I get to these yes, no, not given, and don't worry, girls and guys, I will give you a chance to answer here with me. All right, so hopefully everybody's following along. Now, for those of you who are following so far, you should realize that I've only spent about 10, 11 minutes until this point on the passage and the questions, and I have a very clear understanding of what's going on. Okay, so here we go with the questions. Yes, no, not given. Same as true, false, not given. Same strategy. Those that fall for common scams deserve to be compensated by society. Is it important to know whether or not people who fall for common scams deserve to be compensated by society? Is that important for this talk about the American crisis? Those that fall for common scams deserve to be compensated by society. Is that important? Yes, and is it true according to the author? So does the author believe that people who fall for common scams, and I remember here it's the email scams, was it true that they should be compensated? So if I fall for an email scam, if somebody says, send me $1 million, you just won the lottery, should I be compensated by that? No. So I'm going to put N. Many homeowners are too young and irresponsible. So for the crashing of the American subprime mortgage crisis, is it important for us to know that the people who are buying the houses are young and irresponsible? For number 28? No, we don't need to know that. That's the right answer, Pratesh. So therefore, the answer must be not given, right? The age of the homeowners doesn't matter. You could be a young person or an older person, and if the bank is giving you a loan that you can't repay, many people will buy it regardless of their age. Society trusts the banking system. Is it important for this topic for us to know whether or not people trust the banking system? Is it important for us to know that in a lending free trade market, people trust banks? Yes, it's important for us to know that. Is it true? Do people trust the banks? Do people trust banks? Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to give the answer yes there. Home buyers have an ethical obligation to beware of trustworthy institutions. So is it important for us to know how people who are buying homes think about trustworthy institutions? Now, I realize that trustworthy institutions here is just another way to say banks. Is that important for us to know that? Yeah, I think it is. Good answer, Manju, Aziz, Litton, Aisha. Good answers there. Yeah, so it is important. Is it true? Should people beware, be cautious of banks who are just giving them money to buy a house? Is it true? Does the author think that, yeah, hey, if you're going to be borrowing money from a bank, you got to be cautious. You can't just say, hey, it's a bank, no problem, I'm over. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is. So home buyers do have ethical obligations, meaning towards society and themselves. So the answer there is yes. So I'm confident in those answers. No, not given, yes, yes, and I go on to the next set. Okay, so here, without looking at the answer choices, banks have a responsibility too. And I remember I read in this paragraph, I even said it out loud to everyone when I did this. So banks have a responsibility to two entities, right? Anybody remember who have the bank's responsibility to? Banks have a responsibility to whom here? I even said it. I said the whole paragraph. Yeah, that's right, Bella. They're clients. So that was one. And who else? So banks have a responsibility towards their clients and Anybody remember what I said? The industry to each other, right? So the banking industry, right? Not the government, but the banking industry to the finance system. That's right, Nargiza. So now I can look for the answer that matches that one. So banks have a responsibility to, and here I can see it, protect the industry they are a part of, okay? I don't see any other one there that matches as well, so I'm going to choose E. Okay, so they have a responsibility to the industry that they're part of, because when too many banks fail, the whole banking industry fails, right? So E makes a lot of sense. Each bank is responsible for. Each bank is responsible for. The same one makes sense. E probably makes more sense here because each bank is responsible for the industry that they're part of. So I'm going to switch my answer to E here and look for something that makes better sense for banks have a responsibility to people. Let's see. So the breathing room for failure is so low that lending has to stop. Reassure the people it's okay. Instructing their borrowers or their employees to lend in qualified. The smart part of the big economic picture. Protect the industry they're a part of. The banks have to receive a bailout from the government. All right, which one do you think is the best answer? So we're jumping back here. We know each bank is responsible for E, the industry that they're part of, so we have to figure that one out. I'm still having trouble, so I'm going to leave it. A recession is started when? Anybody know? A recession is started when? Okay, well, consider those answers. Just watch my logic here, how I'm doing this, okay? So when is a recession started? Anybody can answer that on their own? When lending has to stop. I remember that from the end of one of the paragraphs, right? If I'm not sure, I can go back. And I remember that I read that at the end of the paragraph. Eventually, the threshold of failure is so low that almost all lending has to cease and a recession is ignited. So I remember that very clearly. I can go back and I can answer that one. The breathing room for failure is so low that lending has to stop. That looks good. The reassurance, reassure the people that it is okay to borrow money. Instructing their employees. Okay, they're a small part of the big economic picture. Protect the industry you're part of. The banks have to receive a bailout from the government. Okay, I know that A looks the best. So A is the answer here. Now I'm going to look at this one again and see if I can find a better answer. Banks have a responsibility to, the breathing room, no, to reassure the people that it is okay to borrow money, instructing their companies to lend in qualified. They're part of this big economic picture, protect the industry they're a part of. The banks have to receive a bailout. Okay, here I realize that B is the one that makes the most sense grammatically. So here I don't remember reading this clearly, but when I match it up with the remaining answers, I notice that the grammar really only makes sense with B. So my answers are B, E, and A. And now I'm confident in these answers. So I just showed you an interesting strategy there of putting different pieces together to get the correct answer set. I hope you were able to follow that along. If you weren't able to follow that, no worries. This lesson is being recorded and will be available on the YouTube channel in about an hour. Now, real quick, girls and guys, how much time did I spend? Oh, I missed a question. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Make sure you answer all the questions. Okay, so let's go. Here we go. Missed a couple of questions here. All right. So here's the paragraph completion one. The American government's role. It is the American government which is arguably most responsible for the economic crisis. In order to something properly, people must be sheltered from possible problems created by. In order to everyone, popularity, blip, desire, signs, borrow themselves, culture, function, government. I think the best answer there is H. So I'm putting the letter, not the word, into the answer key. In order to function properly, people must be sheltered. Here I know it's function because function and properly go together well and it makes sense in the sentence. People must be sheltered from possible problems created by something. So problems created by irresponsible lending, irresponsibility, threats, something. So everyone, popularity blip, desires, signs, government, function, culture, themselves, borrow. So I think desires might be a good one. And I'm going to put that. So created by desires, because we know that desires, G, works here. Okay? Regulation is required in any society in order to coerce people into acting for the benefit of everyone, right? Makes the most sense there. I hope you're realizing that that's the right answer. Of everyone. Government is in place to serve its citizens, and in this case it has failed. Apologists say that the recession is just a blip on the radar. Blip means like a bloop, 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 bloop. Okay, that's a blip. That's me blipping out. Okay, so E would go there. On the radar of American supremacy, while others say that such bumps on the road are signs of serious problems, I believe. Yeah, so I would go there. Okay, now we're going to shift a little bit here. Regulation is the solution to the problem, but the American something of independence and small government will be very difficult to crack. I think that's culture, right? Culture of independence makes the most sense. Now, I don't want to explain in detail why I was able to choose those so quickly. Part of it was just knowing the words and knowing their word form, noun, adjective, so on, adverb, and then fitting it into the right context. So I hope that you were able to follow along with that. Which of the following phrases best describes the main aim of reading passage 3? The main aim of reading passage 3 is to understand who is to blame for the American crisis in 2000. That's what I believe. So I'm going to check and see if I have an answer that's close to that. To suggest that the recession is the fault of the American government alone, no. To suggest that people need to stop trusting banks, to suggest that every person and company needs to be responsible to each other, to suggest that the American government needs to bail out companies when they need the money. So, A, B, C, or D? Anybody? What's the best one? Yeah, Aisha, I agree with you. C would be the best answer here. So, suggest that every person and company needs to be responsible to each other. Yeah, that is a big aim of this passage, to inform people that, hey, look, we can't just keep pointing at you're the problem, no, we all are part of the problem and the solution. We need to be responsible for each other. Okay, there. Now I can say that we did that passage with all of my talking, reading aloud. Of course, it's a bit easier when you're just in your head during the exam. I think that was about 23 minutes for that whole passage. So that's how much time you have in the real IELTS exam to complete one of these passages, okay? Now, if you're not talking aloud like I am and you're not conversing with students, you should be able to do it in the 20 minutes, okay? So I'd probably have, if I weren't actually teaching, if I was sitting at the desk doing this silently in my brain during the official IELTS exam, I'd probably have about 30-40% of my time still left. I probably would have finished this in about 12 minutes. Okay? Gurnur, if you want to donate money, I appreciate it. It's very kind of you. If you have Super Chat in your country, it's the little dollar sign beside your emoji, and you have a Google Wallet account, you can do it that way. You can also go to our website, gieltshelp.com and aehelp.com, and sign up for the full course there. And then you're not just donating money, but you're actually getting all of these materials and strategies as well. So let me jump back to our sheet here. Okay. So again, that was reading passage 2 and 3 from test 1. Girls and guys, if you're following these lessons every day, I highly recommend getting our books on our websites, aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. You will be able to follow these lessons even more accurately, review them, and so on, and you'll find all the videos there. So thank you so much for watching today's lesson, the first lesson of this week. I will be back tomorrow at the same time. That's 16:30 Central European Budapest time. Tomorrow we will cycle back to the listening section. We'll do some listening practice coming from test 2 of our books. That's the same for the general and the academic. So if you've already signed up for our full course, then please make sure that you have a look at that. You can review it before tomorrow's class so you can follow and do even better. So tomorrow we'll be listening. We'll be doing speaking near the end of the week on Saturday, Bilar. So thank you so much, girls and guys, for watching this lesson today. And I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your day. Good night and sweet dreams if it's late in your country and you're ready to go to bed. Don't forget to brush your teeth, and flossing is a great way to protect your teeth for the future. If you can do that, do that. Just a little life hack there. Much love to everybody. I look forward to seeing you in tomorrow's class. Bye for now. Peace out.